The founder of the heavily indebted Chinese real estate company Evergrande, Xu Jiayin, is being publicly tried at the Shenzhen Intermediate Court from April 13th to 14th. Xu Jiayin faces 8 charges and admitted guilt in court. However, his confession marks only the legal conclusion of an unprecedented debt crisis. The more pressing issue is how much of Evergrande's 2.4 trillion yuan debt can actually be recovered. According to the court announcement, this trial involves 3 defendants: Evergrande Group, Evergrande Real Estate, and Xu Jiayin personally. Xu Jiayin is facing the most charges, with a total of 8. Illegal public deposit taking, fundraising fraud, illegal loan issuance, illegal fund use, fraudulent securities issuance, improper disclosure of important information, embezzlement, and corporate bribery. The bribery charge reminds us of Evergrande's infamous performance troupe. Xu Jiayin's involvement in using the Evergrande song and dance troupe for power, money, and sexual transactions has been widely reported as a case of systemic corruption. Officially, the troupe was a corporate cultural symbol, but in reality, it served as a high-level public relations tool and a beauty battalion for luring officials. The Evergrande song and dance troupe was founded in 1999 and formally registered in 2011, only to be disbanded in 2024. Located on the 41st floor of Evergrande's headquarters, the troupe's premises were reportedly off-limits to regular employees. Xu Jiayin spared no expense in supporting the troupe. At its peak, the troupe had over 200 female performers, each beautiful and alluring. Ordinary performers earned a monthly salary of 50,000 yuan, while core members made over 5 million yuan annually. The troupe's wage expenditures alone amounted to over 100 million yuan. It is reported that the troupe leader, Bai Shanshan, earns an annual salary of 9 million yuan and was gifted a 4 billion yuan luxury home in Shenzhen Bay, covering an area of 980 square meters. On her personal social media, she showcases her luxury cars, yachts, and the Shenzhen Bay No. 1 mansion. Financial media have commented that the total annual expenditure on facilities, including the 41st floor VIP club, KTV, bars, bathhouses, training centers, and more, amounts to nearly 200 million yuan. Multiple reports reveal that Evergrande's core members were selected through a strict process. They had to be aged 18 to 25, graduated from an art academy, stand over 168 centimeters tall, and possess outstanding looks and temperament. The selection and operation of the core members of the dance troupe followed a highly systematic, goal-oriented beauty hunting mechanism, which can be clearly divided into 4 key stages: selection, training, reception, and control. These steps were closely intertwined to serve the illegal exchange of power and capital. Evergrande's female performers would accompany high-ranking officials in high-end clubs, presidential suites, or private villas under the guise of cultural performances, gradually establishing intimate relationship with key political and business figures, creating an ambiguous atmosphere, and sometimes engaging in sexual relations, which were then used to control and blackmail them. The process was often accompanied by secret recordings and videos to manipulate officials to green-light land approvals and loan releases. Reports from dismissed officials and former employees confirm that this process was semi-public within Evergrande and followed a top-tier public relations standard operating procedure. It led to the involvement of 120 to 180 officials and executives, with trillions of yuan being funneled through this network. For example, former CITIC Bank president Sun De-shun, who was sentenced to a suspended death sentence for bribery totaling nearly 1 billion yuan, confessed to being hunted by Evergrande's dance troupe. Evergrande hosted banquets under the guise of cultural exchanges and arranged for core female performers to accompany the officials. In an ambiguous atmosphere, the officials were slowly drawn into private spaces where relations took place. Evergrande then used the audio and visual evidence to blackmail them into approving 120 billion yuan in loans. When the crisis broke out, most of the female performers had already left their jobs, married, or emigrated, and none were held criminally responsible. Some media even attributed Evergrande's 2.4 trillion yuan debt to the beauty trap created by this dance troupe. As some have bluntly stated, without this troupe, Xu Jiayin would not have been able to close so many deals. Famous entrepreneur Xu Jiayin once spoke in an interview about Xu's dance troupe. He revealed, Xu Jiayin recruited university students through experiential recruitment, which is more intense than the emperor's 3 palaces and 6 courtyards. When asked if he had visited the Evergrande song and dance troupe, Xu Jiayin admitted, "Yes, I've been there. It's even more exaggerated than what people say. Otherwise, Jack Ma wouldn't have been applauding there. You can't control yourself. This is a place that changes people's normal views. After university girls come in, they dance, and then they're sent to certain rooms. They go in crying and come out smiling. You can imagine what happens, right? Surely they gave a lot. I just went there to watch their performance, but I didn't go into the VIP rooms." If Xu Jiayin hadn't been arrested, the public would have never seen these videos from the song and dance troupe. One netizen joked, "I bought an Evergrande apartment, and it's unfinished. When I'm frustrated, I watch Evergrande's dance troupe. Well, I treat it as if I just bought a high-priced ticket. Watching a few more times will make up for it." Now, with Xu Jiayin in legal trouble, the once glorious dance troupe is nowhere to be found. These young women, who once mingled between sky-high nightclubs and dinner tables, likely never imagined that behind the glamour, countless families would be shattered. While Xu Jiayin faces trial, what concerns the market and creditors the most is still the massive debt left in its wake. According to financial reports, as of December 2022, Evergrande Group's total debt reached 2.44 trillion yuan, setting the record for the highest loss by a Chinese company. What does 2.44 trillion yuan mean? It's about 2% of China's 2023 GDP. If divided among 1.4 billion people, each person would get 1,742 yuan. Building an aircraft carrier costs 30 billion yuan. Xu Jiayin's debt could buy 80 aircraft carriers. What's more, while Xu Jiayin has gone to prison, the debt and unfinished buildings are being left for countless ordinary people to bear. Where did the massive debt go? In a word, it didn't vanish into thin air. It was all carefully planned. First, family members pocketed the money for themselves. From 2009 to 2022, Xu Jiayin and his wife took over 50 billion yuan in dividends, all transferred to offshore accounts and hidden in family trusts. Luxury homes in London, office buildings in New York, private jets, yachts, and Rolls-Royces were all bought with the hard-earned money of home buyers and investors. Despite knowing the company's financial situation, Xu Jiayin accelerated asset transfers just before the crisis. Around 2019, they set up a single-family trust fund in the U.S. up to $2.3 billion, naming their 2 sons as beneficiaries. On the surface, it was for intergenerational inheritance and asset protection. But in reality, it was a failsafe before disaster hit. Second, reckless expansion, burning through money. After going public in 2009, Evergrande surged forward. Beyond real estate, it ventured into football, automobiles, bottled water, health products, and film, taking on any project that could attract financing. The Guangzhou Evergrande football team burned tens of billions of yuan annually, and the Evergrande Auto project invested hundreds of billions, yet only a handful of cars were sold. Third, borrowing to pay off old debt, with interest eating up most of it. These diversifications were presented as strategic investments, but were actually aimed at creating a bigger story to raise more money. Land reserves, urban renewal projects, and foreign bonds were all supported by high leverage. After the money was spent, most of it didn't turn into real assets, but was instead wasted maintaining the illusion of growth. The down payments and mortgages paid by homeowners, the project funds advanced by suppliers, and the money raised by investment products all flowed into these seemingly glamorous but low-return projects. When policy tightening came, the financing chain broke, leaving behind countless unfinished buildings and unmet promises. What's even more lethal was the borrow-to-pay-back cycle. Of the 2.44 trillion yuan in debt, interest-bearing debt reached 1.72 trillion yuan, with interest payments potentially swallowing hundreds of billions every year. To pay off old debts, they could only borrow more at higher interest rates, stacking on trust, offshore bonds, and bank loans, creating an ever-growing hole. Fourth, falsifying and bribery to plug the holes. Financial fraud and illegal operations became the last resort to maintain the appearance of success. From 2019 to 2020, Evergrande inflated its income and profits to fraudulently obtain bond issuance qualifications. It violated loan issuance rules, misused funds, illegally accepted public deposits, and engaged in fundraising fraud. These actions not only filled short-term holes, but also provided lubrication for land approvals and loan extensions. In the end, it all turned into bad debt and debt accounts. Evergrande's actual debt and asset situation have gradually been pieced together through announcements made by more and more mainland courts and the Hong Kong High Court. On January 29, 2024, Evergrande Group was ordered to be liquidated by Hong Kong executives. On September 16, 2025, the Hong Kong High Court made a historic ruling to take control of Evergrande founder Xu Jiayin's global assets and freeze over $7.7 billion of his assets, along with seizing 33 luxury homes, private jets, and yachts. But with trillions of yuan in holes, only a tiny fraction of that has been recovered. Countless homebuyers, investors, suppliers, and migrant workers have suffered massive losses, most of which are unlikely to be compensated. This isn't just a business tragedy or an operational failure. It's a premeditated act of pillaging and fraud. Statistics show that Evergrande's collapse involves around 6 million unsold properties across 200 cities, making it the largest and most impactful livelihood crisis in China's real estate market history. Even more alarming is the 1.62 million unfinished properties. Behind these unfinished buildings are countless family tragedies. For example, Mr. Li, a retired teacher from a county in Hebei, saved up 300,000 yuan to pay his son's down payment on an Evergrande property. The property was left unfinished. His son's marriage was broken off, and now they're still renting. The 300,000 yuan is gone, and they're still paying off the mortgage. Since the debt explosion in 2021, nearly 5 years have passed, and millions of families have drained their life savings and taken off massive mortgages, only to face unfinished buildings with exposed steel bars and an indefinite wait time for their homes. The one question that weighs on the homeowners' minds is, will they ever get their money back? Will their homes ever be delivered? How can they resolve the dilemma of paying a mortgage for a home they'll never live in? There's another group of victims, those who bought Evergrande's financial products. They thought investing in the world's #1 real estate company would be a sure deal, but instead, they watched their money disappear. According to the prosecution, Xu Jiayin is accused of illegally raising over 400 billion yuan. Evergrande Wealth alone illegally raised approximately 92.1 billion yuan, with 34 billion yuan still unpaid, directly affecting the livelihoods of more than 100,000 families. For example, 65-year-old Auntie Zhang invested 500,000 yuan in Evergrande's financial products. According to Evergrande's bankruptcy asset distribution plan, ordinary creditors will only receive a 0.69% repayment rate. Ms. Zhang will only be able to recover 3,450 yuan from her 500,000 yuan investment. On August 12, 2025, Evergrande released a chilling announcement. The company would officially delist from the Hong Kong Stock Exchange on August 25th. Its market value had dropped to just 2.15 billion Hong Kong dollars, a staggering 100-fold decrease from its peak of 400 billion Hong Kong dollars. According to previous reports from mainland media, approximately 160,000 retail investors held Evergrande shares, which were now at risk of becoming worthless. What's more, even Xu Jiayin's own people were deceived. Former Evergrande executive Ms. Gu shared her experience of being caught in the trap.
来给大家介绍一下你被坑的经历。
Can you tell us about your experience of being deceived? Could you share your position at Evergrande at this time?
我们是一家大控股的一家上市公司，我在里。
We were part of a major listed company, and I was in the management. Many managers were deceived as well. At the time, Evergrande's RV Treasure was about to go public, and Xu Jiayin gave a policy where everyone in the company with a vice president title or above had to subscribe to this equity. The plan was to list on NASDAQ. The policy we were given was that each person had different shares, and if it went public, we would cash out according to our shareholding. If it didn't, we would get dividends with an annualized return of 10 to 12%. A lot of people were willing to invest because whether it went public or not, at least Xu Jiayin's backing made it seem good, so several of us invested 10 million yuan. Later, RV Treasure didn't go public, and the whole situation became quite comical. What was initially equity investment turned into a personal loan from Xu to us. It was all about the boss culture at the time. Whatever the boss said, we followed. Later, it was converted into debt, and after some time, they told us it would be changed into a property collateral agreement. Property, at least, is a fallback asset, so we chose a residential project in the city center of Kunming, and we signed a 3-party agreement. But later, we got news that the project had been taken over by the government, and they didn't allow us to sign online. A while ago, we even had to file a lawsuit. This has really been mentally and physically exhausting. It was a very failed investment case for me. Mr. B, a former construction supervisor at Evergrande, disclosed that in 2021, to relieve cash flow pressure, Evergrande launched the Evergrande Wealth app, and most employees were assigned investment tasks. Leaders had to pay 10 million yuan worth, the next tier 6 million, mid-level managers 480,000 yuan, and ordinary employees 180,000 yuan. Those who didn't buy faced fines, demotions, and salary reductions. To meet these tasks, internal competitions were held between branches, with those at the bottom having to write self-criticism reports. By the end of 2022, Evergrande Wealth announced that the 8,000 yuan monthly payouts previously promised to investors would be reduced to 2,000 yuan a month. If an Evergrande employee had invested 500,000 yuan, the time to recover the principal would extend from the original 5 years to 20.8 years. However, this plan only lasted for 6 months. On May 31st, 2023, Evergrande Wealth issued another announcement, stating that due to the unsatisfactory recovery of company funds, we are unable to pay according to the original standards. The company failed to provide a new repayment plan, effectively trapping their own people. Countless suppliers were also deceived. Mr. B, who manages on-site construction for Evergrande in Jiangsu, also oversees supplier management. In his view, the closer a supplier was to Evergrande, the worse their outcome. He told the media, suppliers who advanced funds did so because they wanted to continue cooperating. First, they saw potential profits, and second, they trusted Evergrande's brand, as their advertising was so good. They all thought the ship wouldn't sink. He recalls that one company in Wuxi, which had a long-term partnership with Evergrande, advanced 260 million yuan. He says, "I was shocked at the time. I don't know if they've gone bankrupt now." Because the real estate industry traditionally requires work to be done before payment, Evergrande, with its title as the world's #1 real estate company, always had suppliers who, at Xu's request, provided materials without hesitation. As a result, some suppliers ended up in serious trouble, and they couldn't recover. Records show that Guangtian Company, once a leading construction and decoration company, applied for bankruptcy reorganization without having received 8.87 billion yuan in receivables from Evergrande. Quanzhou Company, which had 3.2 billion yuan in unpaid receivables, now faces the risk of delisting. Other companies like Foshan Sophia Furniture, Gold Mantis, and Jiangshan Opai have filed lawsuits against Evergrande demanding payment. Evergrande's debt hole has not only crippled the company itself, but also dragged former industry leaders and suppliers into bankruptcy, delisting, or legal battles. In the end, Evergrande's high-leverage spending spree accumulated massive debt, and it passed on the risk of unfinished buildings, interrupted supply, and huge losses onto society at large.